Augsburg is a Mozart city by virtue of the fact that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart used to refer to it as Papa's hometown. But the very name Mozart was first listed in Augsburg in 1480 and has been around for many centuries. The house where Wolfgang's papa, Leopold Mozart, was born in 1719 still stands, and the Swabian connections of the Mozart family and the visits made by both Leopold and his famous son to Augsburg are well documented. Augsburg's pride in the published violin techniques of Leopold seems to be almost equal to that of Salzburg's belated pride in Wolfgang's musical accomplishments. For generations, the Mozarts had worked in Augsburg as artisans and craftsmen, that is, as architects, sculptors, and bookbinders. The Mozart family lived and worked in Augsburg itself from 1643 onwards. Leopold was the oldest of the 9 children of Johann Georg Mozart and Anna Maria. His father and 3 brothers were bookbinders in Augsburg. There's also a stone plaque in the Fuggerei, the oldest welfare housing complex in the world, which shows that Leopold's grandfather, Franz Mozart, a bricklayer, was once a Fuggerei resident.
We only know that he became very poor, and so he stayed here in and then his son already lived up in Brauntorstraße, where you find the Mozart house. Then his son was Leopold Mozart, and the son of Leopold Mozart was then great-grandfather. I'm sorry, it's Leopold's grandfather and the great-grandfather of Wolfgang to this room here. You had 2 rooms you could heat. You see the stove here. It was heated from the kitchen because the kitchen is completely constructed of stone. So it's not too dangerous concerning fire there, because here you've got wooden floor, wooden ceiling and so on. So it was much more dangerous.
Leopold Mozart, Wolfgang's father, tutor and music teacher, was born here in 1719. His gifted son visited the city on 5 occasions between 1763 and 1790 to meet relatives, to play music, and sometimes simply be a tourist. Augsburg honours the great Mozart family at Mozart House and a number of other sites with Mozart connections, as well as hosting various musical events in honour of the family, including an annual violin competition in honour of Leopold. This house at Frauentorstrasse 30, where Leopold was born on November 14, 1719, introduces visitors to the world of Wolfgang's forefathers. It also contains the most extensive pictorial collection on the Mozart theme. Leopold was 8 years old when he entered St. Salvator's grammar school, run by the Jesuits. His musical talent became evident at a very early age. He sang in the church choirs of St. Ulrich and Heiligkreuz, or Holy Cross. In addition, he frequently sang in the Jesuits' theatrical performances at his school, which took place in the venue now called Kleine Goldene Saal, or Small Golden Hall. During the 19th century, all buildings of the Augsburg Jesuits were demolished, apart from the Kleine Goldene Saal.
Jesuits also had a very good education concerning theatre and music, and so this was also then the basic for Leopold Mozart and for his career, I would say. So he was a very good musician, and he played theatre here, and then at the age of 18 he decided to go to university in Salzburg.
When conducting a concert tour with their children, Wolfgang and Nanelle, Leopold and his wife stayed at the House of the Three Moors in Augsburg from June 22nd to July 6, 1763. The arrival of the Mozart family was also a topic for the local press. In 3 concerts, Leopold showed Augsburg how extremely talented his children were. At the same time, the children were introduced to their uncle Franz and his 4-year-old daughter, their Basil, or cousin, Maria Anna Tekla. Augsburg is also known as the city where the Reformation was properly explained in the so-called Confession by Martin Luther. He came to town to meet the papal delegate Cardinal Cajetan in 1518 and have his 95 theses examined. He took the precaution of locking himself away in a small prayer cell in St. Anna's Church to avoid the fate of Czech reformer Jan Hus, who preached much the same thing 100 years before Luther, only to be burned to death as a heretic. The architectural Renaissance look of Augsburg is attributed to the early 17th century work of Elias Holl, He did a wonderful makeover of the medieval watchtower, the Perlach Tower, which stands alongside his other masterpiece, the Rathaus, with its impressive golden hall, complete with marble floor, gold leaf pillars, and painted wooden ceilings. There are other architectural delights, including the Fugger's City Palace, with its Damenhof, or Ladies' Courtyard, the Schätzler Palace, with its Baroque German art gallery, and Rococo ballroom. The Maximilian Museum with its sandstone bay windows. Its old town area is compact, easily navigated, and has buildings that add to the absorbing atmosphere of a provincial city with an illustrious history. Up the hill from the castle along romantic cobblestone roads and through magnificent arcades is the Strahov Monastery, dating back to the 12th century, famous for its musical tradition and its organ. Mozart wanted to hear the organ and was permitted to play it himself. The organist, Norbert Lehmann, who was present there, later remembered how Mozart developed a theme from a fugue of a requiem in C minor so skillfully that it left the listeners astounded. Nearby is the beautiful Loreto, built in 1626 in honor of the legend of Santa Casa in the Italian city of Loreto. The Little Venice area alongside Camper Island. On the other side of the river, it's a blend of the very old and the more recent history of Prague. In the wonderful Old Town Square, the visitor marvels at such sights as the Baroque St. Nicholas Church, as the former Hussite Church, Our Lady Before Tin, and the square's centrepiece, the astronomical clock on the face of the old town hall. The clock dates from 1490, when it's said the master clockmaker Hannes, who built it, was blinded so that he couldn't repeat his masterpiece. Hourly, the 12 apostles revolved through opened windows above this timeless piece of craftsmanship. Thanks for your company, guys. Another landmark nearby is the elegant Estates Theatre, built in 1783, and where 4 years later the opera Don Giovanni debuted, with Mozart himself at the piano conducting the orchestra. Josefa and Franz Duschek continued to invite Mozart to visit Prague. But by December 1786, when the Italian impresario Pasquale Bondini staged La Nozze di Figaro, the marriage of Figaro, in the Estates Theatre in Prague, Mozart was impressed by how Prague audiences had acclaimed his opera a great success. So at the beginning of 1787, when Count Thun invited Mozart to come to Prague to conduct a performance of the opera himself, Wolfgang readily accepted. On his arrival, Mozart was astonished to find how much the atmosphere of the city was filled with his music. On the carriage ride through the streets of the old town and then across to Count Thun's palace on the other side of the river, again and again Mozart heard people singing and whistling his arias from Figaro. It's not surprising that Mozart would 4 years later make the statement, "My people of Prague really understand me." On the very night of their arrival, they attended a ball in Bretfield Palace, the house of summer and spring, owned by the prominent lawyer Johann Baron von Bretfield. Another guest was Giacomo Casanova. In October 1787, Mozart arrived back in Prague with his librettist Lorenzo da Ponte. As Mozart was to premiere his new opera Don Giovanni at the Nostitz, or Estates Theatre, the composer and the poet were lodged down the street, with Mozart staying on the first floor of the Three Golden Lions Inn, and da Ponte at the rear of the Flatfish Inn, so that their windows were opposite each other across a narrow street, and where it's said they exchanged words about the opera through their open windows. Mozart had also stayed briefly at the same house owned by the Duscheks on their earlier visit in January, a short distance from the medieval church St. Martin's in the Wall. During this stay, however, Mozart spent a lot of his time at Villa Bertramka with the couple, the excellent singer Josefa Duschek and her husband, the composer Franz Xaver Duschek. It was here in a serene garden setting Mozart completed the overture to Don Giovanni, just hours before its debut performance at the Nostitz Theatre on the 29th of October 1787. Villa Bertramka is still a green oasis in the midst of bustling modern-day Prague. It's claimed that Wolfgang inscribed his initials on the stone table above the garden, but if he did, the letters are no longer discernible. However, it's here you can almost feel the Mozart mood, oscillating between mischievous fun and inspired musical moments.
Countess Josefa Duschek, Madame. because we would like you can absorb the beautiful atmosphere of the 18th century. We will offer you the nice music written by Josef Mysliveček, the well-known Czech composer. I would like to please the ensemble Arco Collegium. And we wish you have here a very beautiful time. Thank you. Surprise for you. The review of Don Giovanni.
Show me, Josefina.
Yeah. On Monday 29th was played Mozart's long-awaited opera by an Italian opera company. Specialists in music and musicians say that there hasn't been anything like that in Prague yet. Maestro Mozart conducted himself. When he got up on the stage, he was 3 times rendered homage. Unbelievable number of people rewarded the opera with a round of applause. Isn't it beautiful? Well done.
Na, das ist aber schon die Herr, der macht Ihnen einen Hof an meiner Anwesenheit. Doch dazu mit meinem Job.
It is not necessary to be jealous, my dear of Mozart. You just forgot we have an English society. So, not from England, so from Australia, and they don't understand German. But you can be calm, because his gentlemen, they'd honor you, not me. Do come in, Signor Croce! Wolfgang, I would like to introduce you another study of Don Giovanni. He couldn't be thinking about better German, could he? So, che cosa avete preparato, signor Croce?
Questa è la canzonetta, maestro.
Oh yeah, let him finish this canzonetta.
Prego, maestro.
Isn't written bad.
Ancora un po'?
Ancora?
Sì.
Sì? Adesso? Sì, stasera? Maestro? No, Mia voce futsch ist weg. Ja? Aha. Cari amici, saluti, 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 saluti. Sì.